Today on Retire with Purpose, how to protect yourself and your family from financial scams. Is tax-free retirement just a fairy tale? And how to tell if you're saving enough for your retirement.
Are you prepared to retire with purpose? To retire knowing your savings is invested to meet unavoidable needs and expenses.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
Certified financial planner Casey Weed is president of Howard Bailey, an advisory firm that believes successful retirement begins with a detailed financial plan personalized to help achieve your life's purpose.
Whatever risk you faced, we've got a plan.
The Howard Bailey team is committed to practical financial planning so you can enjoy family and the future without uncertainty or stress. Stay tuned and learn how you too can retire with purpose.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Lee Kelso here with Casey Weed, certified financial planner and the president of Howard Bailey Financial. We're going to begin today with what I think is a pretty important subject, and that is helping protect your parents from financial fraud. It's far more common than you might think.
It is, and we've got a lot of families that we work with that are, the trustees for their parents or aunts or power of attorneys, or just in guardianship in some instances, or they just love their family, they love their friends, and they want to take care of them and make sure that they don't get hurt. Mm-hmm. And we get asked all the time, what are some things that I can do in order to make sure that my mom or my dad or my loved one doesn't get involved in some type of financial scam? And I think today it's more prevalent than ever that we have these scams that are out there, and they wouldn't be out there if they didn't work. And so it's important for us and our loved ones to understand what are some basic things that we can do in order to protect ourselves from getting taken advantage of.
Well, I think the first step is just helping them make sure that they're aware that this is a risk, right?
Yeah, I think it's being what I like to call an informative interrogator. Okay, so and that might look, it's about asking the right questions, doing it in the right way, to not be insulting. And I think if you do it in the wrong way, it can push loved ones away.
So
you can make them feel uncomfortable, and the last thing you want to do is make them feel stupid. Yeah. Right? You want to have a conversation to say, well, have you heard about the latest robocall scam, or did you hear about the latest email scam that's been going around? Asking just some informative questions, and you'll be able to tell, judging by their reaction, if they have seen these things or been involved in these things, and you can decide if you need to dive further.
Yeah, my mother-in-law got one of those calls from somebody saying, this is your grandson, I've been arrested, I need bail money.
Yeah.
She was smart enough to know, but
exactly.
They're out there.
Well,
the
same exact thing happened to our vice president, certified financial planner Marshall Johnson in our office. His grandmother lives in Michigan, and she had received a phone call just like that I'm in jail, and so on and so forth. Someone he was involved with had also received a phone call saying, hey, we've got someone coming to your house that you're going to be arrested because you haven't paid your taxes. I mean, there are so many of these scams out there that we need to watch out for and stay up on and educate on, and most of it's common sense, but if you're new to it, it might not be common sense. So staying informed.
Okay, so we're going to have a discussion, and then what about a credit check, credit report? Is that important?
I think having a credit report and doing our regular credit checks is important, and we can do this for our loved ones. I know I've used Credit Karma for myself and my wife, and we've had really good luck with that. We've been able to I've found it very interesting to see what's going on, and it can be very helpful for your loved ones because you can see if a credit card's been opened in their name that they're unaware of, or if something's been purchased or a major investment's been made that they're unaware of, or if accounts have been opened in their name. And I think you've had a little experience with this yourself.
Yeah, several years ago I checked my credit and found that I owned a house in Florida that I knew nothing about.
Well, it'd be great if you owned that house, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, at least I had the mortgage for the house in Florida. Yeah, right. So what about duplicate statements? Should we be monitoring all those things for our folks?
Yeah. Well, we do that for a lot of the families we work with that have a parent or grandparent that might be a client, and we'll end up setting up duplicate statements where we've got, we work with Fidelity Brokerage, so to third-party custody our clients' assets, and we sometimes in situations will have one statement sent to the children, one statement sent to the grandparent or parent for that matter, and that can be a good thing to do just to monitor the activity in the account. make sure there's nothing funny going on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. DPOA, Durable Power of Attorney, what is that and why is it important?
Yeah, I think durable power of attorney is a really important thing. It's something that I've done with my family. We've got springing power of attorneys for between spouses. We've got a durable power of attorney between myself, my dad, and that just makes sure that if there is something that comes up, if we need to sign for something, or if we need to look into something, research something, pull some financial information, that we have the right to do so because we've signed power of attorney over to that individual. It works really well with my dad and I because we have such a good relationship, that we have so much trust for one another, that we know that neither one of us is ever going to take advantage of the other. And that's a really important aspect of having a durable power of attorney, is you have to have it established with someone that you truly trust through and through, because you are handing over a lot of power to that individual when it comes to your financial life.
And what's that process? I have to go through an outside attorney to get that done, do I not?
Not necessarily. When I originally did it for my dad and I, and then even when I set up power of attorney between my wife and I, which is a very important thing. Most people want to have at the very minimum a springing power of attorney in the case you become incapacitated. But you don't have to go to an attorney. It doesn't cost you thousands of dollars to establish. You can go to an attorney and they'll set it up for you, and it really probably takes them all 5 to 10 minutes to plug it into their software. But today you can go directly to LegalZoom, for that matter. I know that's what we used, LegalZoom.com, to go there, and for a very, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was very inexpensive just to set up power of attorney. We actually went through all of our legal documents initially, setting up our wills, our power of attorneys. Those documents were very easy to establish. They're very simple. It was very inexpensive. Now, as our life got more complex and we took on more businesses, we opened up other businesses, we had children. Now there was a need for greater estate planning and actually to pay a little bit more and actually go to an attorney. Most people can get by just going to LegalZoom.
So we're talking about fraud and protection against fraud, and you hear commercials all the time for various services. LifeLock comes to mind. Do you believe in these things?
I do. I didn't used to. I used to think, well, I don't know if I really want to centralize my information and have it, monitored in one place. I don't know that I need that. And then about a year ago, I had one of the families that I've worked with for a long time that's become a close friend, got involved in this whole situation where his identity was stolen. And it was devastating for him and his family. It took up hours of their time, and if they would have had one of these services on their side, it would have at the very least given them better confidence that they were going to be able to get through the process, and give them some insurance at the same time to overcome some of the expenses that they incurred just trying to clean everything up. EverSafe is one that actually has programs out there specifically for the elderly and grandparents, and that might be something that you want to do as a gift around Christmas, around the holidays. At the very least, you've given that person a greater sense of security. And I think a lot of what we do as financial planners, and if we're doing a little financial planning maybe for a loved one like this, a grandparent or a parent, the best gift that we can give in putting together a financial plan is not giving them the best return on their investment. That's a great thing for us to accomplish, but it's really just peace of mind to know that, hey, we're going to be okay, so that we can have that sense of security, so that we can go through retirement without worry.
Well, if you'd like to have a little peace of mind about your retirement plan, I hope you'll jump on the phone right now and be one of the next callers to ask for a complimentary review of what's happening in your retirement with a member of the Howard Bailey team. It's a sit-down session where you'll take a look at fees and expenses that you might be paying that you're not aware of, taxes that you might be able to avoid. Is there risk lurking in your portfolio when the next market turns down, the next market downturn comes? What's going to happen to you? Do you understand what that risk profile looks like right now? And how about a long-term income stream for you in retirement? Is there a provision for that in your planning right now? All things that we'll review in this complimentary retirement review with a member of the Howard Bailey team, and you can get it just by jumping on the phone and making that request right now, and we hope you will. All right, here's our question of the day, and we hope you'll get this one right as well. It has to do with percentage of Americans over the age of 65. How many of them have been the victim of a financial scam artist? The answer when we come back.
At Howard Bailey Financial, every dollar has a purpose. We call it the purpose-based retirement. A certified financial planner will help you decide what you need your retirement money to do for you. We put together a written plan that puts your dollars exactly where you want them to be. And we put every dollar to work to maximize your retirement efficiency. For a higher level of insight and care, choose the purpose-based retirement from Howard Bailey Financial. Call us now to set a complimentary consultation.
So heading into the break, we asked you our question of the day. It had to deal with how many Americans who were senior citizens have been the victim of financial scam artists. Casey, what's the correct answer there?
Well, unfortunately, the answer is 20%. That's 2 out of every 10 individuals over the age of 65 have been the victim of a financial scam artist. And that's why it's so important that we stay up to date on what these things are, how we can protect ourselves. And we talked about a lot of different things when we opened up the show today. And I would throw one more thing in there, and that would be, a lot of the scams today, I would say, a good majority of them are happening online. They're happening with viruses, they're happening with emails, they're happening via phishing and phishing emails to be more specific. And what we can do is educate our loved ones, educate ourselves on what phishing is when it comes to email, and just keeping our computers up to date, having good virus software. In our office, we have round-the-clock monitoring of our total office when it comes to our online presence to make sure there's no intrusion and to make sure that we're not getting hit up with phishing and viruses. These are things that you have to do for yourself as well.
So we're going to move ahead to our questions from viewers, and the first one has to do with something you may have heard of, and that's called target funds.
Casey, can you explain how target date funds work, and do you generally see them as a good idea or not?
Well, Jim, I think target date funds can be a very valuable thing for us to utilize when it comes to our 401ks, especially if we're not going to pay close attention to these things, or we don't work with a financial advisor that's going to offer us guidance in our asset allocation. We're not going to sit down, do regular reviews. If you're going to take that statement every single month that shows up in the mail and you're just going to burn the darn thing, then you should probably think about using target date funds. And those target date funds really work like this. You just pick the date that you think you're going to retire, and they're very simplistic working vehicles where you've got an equity allocation, a fixed income allocation, and really it's just going to kind of ratchet up that fixed income allocation as you get closer to retirement. So automatically rebalancing and getting you more conservative every single year as you approach that target date of retirement. There have been some things in the news here recently that have outlined that some of these target date funds have been getting much more aggressive than they actually should be. And some of them have actually gotten a little bit of regulatory trouble. And the reason that they would argue, the regulatory bodies are saying that they're getting more aggressive than maybe they should be, is they're thinking, well, if I'm more aggressive inside of this target date fund, my performance is going to look better, and we're going to collect more funds, and we're going to be used as more options in other 401ks as well. So I think that's one of the things we have to be careful of. Make sure that you understand that target date fund and actually the makeup of the fund itself. And I think, if you're 30 years old, you're 20 years out from retirement, 10 years out from retirement even, they can make decent vehicles for those that are going to just put their head in the sand. However, as you get closer to retirement, you can no longer do that. You get 5-10 years out from retirement, now you're getting into the retirement red zone, and the plan has to be much more specific. Those funds kind of use the old rule of 100, but you may not need to use the rule of 100. So you might need to take on more risk in order to get yourself through retirement. You might need to take less risk in order to get yourself through retirement. It's not a financial plan. It's just a mutual fund with an asset allocation mix that's conservative, moderate, or aggressive, or anywhere on the spectrum. And by the time you get close to retirement, you need a real financial plan, and that's when it needs to start getting structured.
Yeah, because sometimes one size doesn't fit all, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Let's get to a question from Camilla. Go ahead.
Is there really such a thing as a tax-free retirement? It sounds like a fairy tale to me.
Well, Camila, I think for many it is probably a fairy tale. I mean, tax-free retirement is a very easy thing to do if we don't have any income, right? And unfortunately, that's not the reality. I mean, we want income, we need income. If we have income, we have retirement. Without income, we don't have retirement. So typically, when we have income, we're going to have taxable income coming back to us, but not for everybody. And the sooner we get started planning for this, the better. If you find yourselves a good deal out from retirement, then maybe you make all your contributions to your Roth 401ks or your Roth IRAs and maybe some cash value life insurance. So you're saving everything in tax-free ways. It'll come out tax-free to supplement your Social Security. And maybe you have a tax-free retirement. I think over the next few years, we're going to see more retirees seeing a real tax-free retirement than we have in the past because of the new tax law. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act greatly expanded our tax brackets and reduced the taxes that most of us are going to be paying and gave a huge opportunity to individuals that are maybe a few years out to retirement or having a bridge to retirement for that matter. For instance, I've got a couple that are retiring at 60 years old and they've got a 10-year period certain pension. So they've got enough income to take them through the next 10 years and they've got room in their 12% tax bracket, their 22% bracket, and their 24% bracket that they can convert all their traditional IRA to Roth IRA and make sure by the time they get to 70, they'll have a tax-free retirement. But that's not always the best thing for everybody to do. You really have to sit down and analyze your current situation and see how much tax-free income really matters to you, because depending on what income you're going to have in retirement is ultimately going to determine how impactful it is for you to do things like Roth conversions or like Roth contributions or Roth 401k contributions or setting up tax-free, cash value life insurance that can be used for income. There's a lot of different strategies that you can use to do it. However, it doesn't always work for everybody. I would say today we're doing it more for people than we ever have in the past, though.
It sure sounds nice. The idea just sounds fantastic.
I love a tax-free retirement. It's just not feasible for everybody, but today it's more feasible for more people than it's been in our lifetimes.
So our next question came in via email. It's, Casey, what are your thoughts on life settlements? Can they be beneficial? If so, when does it make sense?
Well, Terry, for everyone else that doesn't know what a life settlement is, why don't we walk people through that? So let's say that you have a life insurance policy and you're 70 years old and now you need some cash, you need some money for retirement, and you don't really have a need for the life insurance policy anymore. Maybe you don't have anybody you want to leave those assets to for this matter. You want some money that you can use for income. Maybe you've got medical expenses and you want to get some extra cash to use for those medical expenses. You can take that life insurance policy and you can sell it to somebody else. You can sell it to a provider or a company that will actually buy that life insurance policy off of you and continue to pay the premiums, and you get some cash in return for exchanging that policy over to them and making them the beneficiary, the owner of the policy itself. And I think they have their place, but in our family we've chosen not to do that. My mom had a life insurance policy, so did my dad, and both of them got to a point where they no longer needed the life insurance policy itself. And I said, well, instead of you selling that life insurance policy to some provider out there, I can actually pay you more than what that provider would pay you. So I know that if I buy that life insurance policy, now I've got a guaranteed return on my investment that's going to give me a tax-free alternative to a Roth. So it kind of works like a Roth IRA for me, because I'm going to continue to pay those premiums on that policy, keep it in force, and give them a lump sum that they can use for things that they want to buy today that really have a positive impact on them, and I'm going to give them more for that policy than they're going to be able to get someplace else. So I think it's something for us to consider as we have these old life insurance policies. We get close to retirement, we don't need them. Maybe instead of using the cash value and just cashing them out, maybe we want to look into selling them. And don't forget, the kids might be looking for a place to put some money, and especially if they're decent income earners, they've got a consistent, reliable income, they're already maxing out their 401k, and they're looking for places to go for tax-free investments. Maybe this is something that you want to utilize for them and help them with their future.
And if you want to find out whether that might be a good fit for you, the opportunity in front of you now is to jump on the phone and request a meeting with a member of the Howard Bailey team where you can talk about matters like that, as we also take a look at what's happening with your particular retirement plan. Are there fees and expenses you're paying that maybe you don't need to? Could you save some money on taxes? What about risk in your portfolio? Or do you have a long-term income plan built into your retirement plan? Maybe not. Maybe life insurance isn't the way to do it. There might be other alternatives, and those are the things that we'll explore as you sit down with a member of the Howard Bailey team for a complimentary retirement review, the first step to putting you down the road toward a purpose-based retirement. We are back in just a second. Stay with us.
At Howard Bailey Financial, every dollar has a purpose. We call it the purpose-based retirement. A certified financial planner will help you decide what you need your retirement money to do for you. We put together a written plan that puts your dollars exactly where you want them to be. And we put every dollar to work to maximize your retirement efficiency. For a higher level of insight and care, choose the purpose-based retirement from Howard Bailey Financial. Call us now to set a complimentary consultation.
We're going to close the program with the topic that Casey covered in one of his weekend reading for retirees.
That is, right? We're going to be covering an article from Michael Kitz's blog, one of my favorite blogs on retirement and financial planning. It's mainly for financial advisors, actually. However, it's got a lot of really good information I think retirees and even people that are on the way to retirement really need to understand. And if you'd like to get signed up to receive these future articles, just go to retirewithpurpose.com, sign up for weekend reading for pre-retirees, retirees. I'll send you out 4 articles directly from my desktop to your inbox with some commentary every single week. And the reason I found this article to be so valuable is because it was about saving, and I think more importantly, it was about spending. You know, most people are focused largely on how much they're saving for retirement. We hear that we need to save 10% for retirement. We need to save 5% of our income, ratchet it up 1% every year, get to 10%, 15%, 20%, but that's really hard for most individuals to do because we're focusing on the wrong thing. And this article really helped us outline that the important part is your spending. How are we spending our dollars? And that'll allow us to ultimately save more for retirement. And we don't even need to save as much for retirement if we've got a good handle on our spending. The traditional model of saving for retirement looks a lot like this. If you're 30 years old and you've got an income of $80,000 a year, you need to be saving about 18% of your income in order to retire at 65 on an 80% replacement ratio. That means you're replacing 80% of that income. At $80,000, that's $64,000 a year you would have in retirement by the time you got to age 65, inflation adjusted, of course. Now, if you're earning $20,000 a year and you're 30 years old, then you need to be putting away 10% of your paycheck every single year. Now, as time goes on, let's say that you didn't hit your peak earning years, until later in life, you finally got the kids out of your house and you go, woof, I can finally start saving. And now you're in your 50s. So at 50 years old, if you have an income that is, say, $100,000 a year, you need to save 60% of your annual income in order to retire on $80,000 a year by the time you get to age 65. Here's the problem. The fact is that the average savings rate in the United States is 3% because we're struggling with this concept of saving 10%, 20% because we're focusing ultimately on the wrong thing. We need to start focusing on this equation, our spending rate. Our spending rate is a factor of 2 things. Most importantly, how much we're spending and how much our income is. If we can decrease our income, if we can decrease our spending, I should say, and increase our income, if we can do a combination of both, that's going to have the biggest impact to ultimately increase our savings rate. So we're just focusing on the wrong thing. It's not savings rate, it's our income and how much we're actually spending. That's the most important equation we can focus on as we get to retirement. And this is why, especially why income is so important, even over spending. So if we take a look at your fixed expenses, that may make up 60% of your annual expenses. You know, your house, your groceries, the things that we have to have, our utility bills that come out every single month, and then we have our discretionary expenses that are, say, 30% of our over budget, and we're saving 10% a year. If we can just increase our income a little bit, and avoid lifestyle creep, then we can start actually saving every additional dollar of additional earnings and putting more of that back in our savings bucket. And if we can increase our income 10%, we could double our savings rate from 10% to 20%. That's why income is such a big deal. Now, when we go back to expenses, we have to figure out if we're spending too much in different areas. And I find that's one of the struggles that a lot of families have is, well, I don't know how much I'm supposed to be spending on housing or entertainment or food. What is the benchmark that I'm supposed to be able to use? And we can't necessarily say this is the benchmark you should be using, but if we look at individuals as a whole in the United States, we find that housing makes up 25% of the average spending for the average household, and that is by far the biggest piece. Then we have transportation, then we have food, and I think the most important takeaway here is if we look at entertainment, that's only about 3.9% of where we on average spend our money. So it's not saving money on not buying that latte on the way to work or going out to the movies or going out to eat that are going to have the biggest impact on how much you can save and ultimately how much you're going to be able to retire with. It's focusing on these bigger areas to have a bigger impact. That's housing, that's transportation, that's food, and these things we typically have a little bit more control over. But that also depends on which income bracket you're in. If you're in the lower income brackets, you don't have as much flexibility. If we look at housing for the lowest income quartile, then we actually find that under that lowest income bracket, housing takes up 90% on average of household expenses. And for some, it's more than 100%, and they're going into debt. We find ourselves in a difficult situation, and we might not even be able to find a lot of discretionary income to start to save. We get into those higher income brackets, and those higher income individuals have a little bit more flexibility with their discretionary savings and maybe even with their housing for that matter. So here's a little chart to help us show, depending on what income bracket you're in, what you should be focusing on. If we look at those lower income brackets, then we should be focusing on earning more. That's what's going to have the biggest impact. And earning more is always going to have a massive impact on our bottom line as long as we don't spend dramatically more when we earn dramatically more. If we look at those high income earners, they can have the biggest impact by saving some of that discretionary income. So where are you? As you start to do your budget and you take a look at all the different numbers and you're trying to put together a benchmark, you say, well, I don't know how much I should be spending. Well, this article gave us a good benchmark for how much you should have in these different areas. For housing, for instance, the average individual should have about a 33% budget allocated to housing. The mass affluent are around 29% that we should have allocated to housing. And this is going to be different for each and every individual, but it's so nice for us to have a benchmark to work off of as we're trying to ultimately get ourselves on the right track for retirement. Because as we say all the time, before you walk in and see a financial advisor, put together a budget, because that's what the whole plan is going to be ultimately predicated on, is how much income you want and how much income you're going to be able to create.
I think it's awfully important to know, as you said, know your numbers, live your numbers, and be ready to discuss those numbers when you go to meet with your financial planner. And here's an opportunity for you to meet with a member of the Howard Bailey team. Call the number on your screen and request a complimentary review of your retirement plan, and we'll review taxes and expenses that are out there that you might be paying you maybe don't have to in your investment portfolio. More importantly, risk. How much risk are you taking in the stock market, and is it appropriate for where you're at in life? And also, do you have a plan for lifetime income you can't outlive? All things we'll review in a complimentary retirement review with a member of the Howard Bailey team. If you call the number on your screen right now and request that meeting, it's the first step toward retiring with purpose. We hope we'll see you next week on the program. Take good care of yourselves.